Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. We're going to get you all set up for the Friday race of the day. It's out at Gulfstream Park. And David, there is going to be a big weekend ahead at Gulfstream Park. What's nice about this modern era of horse racing, we get the entries out very early so we can already start looking at these Pegasus Cup past performances. Big day, 7 graded stakes, the 3 Pegasus World Cup races, I think 13 overall. And we're going to have a lot of them previewed right here for us on the Daily Racing Form YouTube.
Yeah, looking forward to the Pegasus on Saturday. Plenty of stakes action. Some of the top horses in trading right now. I'll be diving into those PPs after we get done recording today.
I'll be making the trip out to Gulfstream for the first time, so looking forward to that. Let's talk about the Friday race of the day. And remember, you can get free past performances for every race of the day, Monday through Sunday. Every time you're looking at one of these, just hop onto the Daily Racing Form homepage, and you'll get those free past performances. So here's the field for race number 9. I thought this was a pretty interesting field, David. Some horses that are probably some familiar names, like Life's an Audible, who's a Grade 3 winner. Last year was a horse who ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies Turf back in 2023. We see a horse like Nugenia, who's a familiar name on the New York circuit. Risk Threshold is stakes placed, and a horse with some upside for Chad Brown. So some talented runners in here.
Yeah, I would say the two keys to this race are risk threshold and life's inaudible because they obviously have plenty of talent, but they both have some major questions to answer coming into this race. Risk threshold, the distance, and life's inaudible, whether she's just the same horse anymore after missing so much time last year.
Risk threshold we can take a look at on the Timeform US pace projector, as this one is stretching out from sprint races back to a mile. She's only been a mile one time. She set the pace that day. She faded. She finished second. That was back in the second start of her career. So she's probably a better horse now, but she has been sprinting and really just at 6 furlongs for the last 4 consecutive races. So should be out there, probably taking them as far as she wants to go.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to make the case that the mile race was the worst one she's ever run. So we'll see how aggressive they are with her and if they're concerned about trying to back down this pace or ration out her speed. And if they try to get too conservative, I mean, there is other speed in this race that wants to be forward horses like the number 1, 19 Amendment, the number 5, Life, Love, and Laughter. They're both horses that have shown speed in just their most recent starts. So I think there is a scenario where this pace could heat up a little bit.
Let's meet the field for race 9, the race of the day on Friday out at Gulfstream Park. So the 119 Amendment, you were kind of hitting on, this is a real wild card in the race because she has some speed. She's in sharp form. This is a step up, so she's going to have to get faster to win this race. But with the inside draw and a jockey like Gutierrez, who is one that can get aggressive, sometimes you have to handicap intent just as much in these races. And I don't think she's in this race to be taken way out of it. I'm expecting her to either be pushing the pace or sitting right behind risk threshold.
Yeah, 2 of her 3 lifetime victories have come in gate to wire fashion. So, I mean, jockeys and trainers look at that and say, I think her best shot is to go to the front end. So, I would imagine that Raylu is going to try to be aggressive with her, and we'll see how much aggression they show with risk threshold to take the lead away from her. She did beat a weaker field last time. She's stepping up in class. Probably 8-1 last time was a generous price on her, and you didn't get it that day. So I think you're hopping on board here, maybe one start too late if you're going to go in her direction this time. But she does appear to be coming into this race in pretty good form.
Yeah, the overall turf form is good. She's never been worse than third in those 8 turf tries. She'll get an acid test in this one. Uphill Dance will get some class relief. Has been facing a little bit better. Even last time out was in a race where the runner-up School Dance came back to win next time at Turfway Park. Just 4 starts back, we're seeing Uphill Dance finishing third in a big field in the Grade 3 Ontario Colleen, but not a lot of early speed she's been showing recently. And just the last couple races, not the best, but does get that relief here. Does she fit for you better in this spot?
She's a really tough call for me because I don't love any of her races since the switch to the Bill Mott barn. And I can make excuses for the Dogwood, which might have been on the wrong surface, and the Valley View, where she was wide around the track and overmatched. Her last race, Flavian Pratt seemed to ride her very conservatively and maybe realized in the stretch he had a little more horse than he thought he did at the quarter pole. And she was kind of running on belatedly, but still never made a big impact in that race. if she was coming off her effort in the Ontario Colleen, I would love her here because that was a slow paced race that was wired on the front end. She made a big late run from towards the back of the pack, ran a great race that day, just hasn't gotten back to it in her recent starts. And she's a horse that is going to need some pace to develop up front.
Number 3, Bedazzlem will make her first start as a 4-year-old, coming in off a 3-month break. Last time we saw her on the turf, she was actually winning the race at Kentucky Downs, going 6.5 furlongs. David, she kind of stayed inside and rode the rail all the way that day. She was 20-1. She was like 10th early on in that race, almost 10 lengths out of it. And at the top of the lane, she just kept saving ground and just kept passing horses inside. What do you think about Bedazzlem getting back to the grass in here?
Yeah, the 85 buyer for the Kentucky Downs victory. It looks impressive on paper, but as you're saying, you go back and watch the replay, and it's just like, oh, they left the rail path
The
completely open
sea's
for her.
open, right? Yeah.
Exactly. The Red Sea's parted, and she just walked right on through. She got the job done that day, beat a decent enough field, but it came back her most recent start, switching to dirt, was chasing outside, just couldn't really finish that day. She has run well in the dirt in the past, so I don't think you just want to ignore the fact that she's coming off a poor effort. I find her prior turf form a little tough to read. She really failed to finish in that race at Churchill back, which is a little concerning to me that, 2 of her last 4 starts, she's just completely shut down in the stretch. So I've got some questions about her.
Risk threshold feels like the one they'll all have to run down in here. I believe we have a replay of the most recent race for risk threshold. Now, this was going 6 furlongs, David, and we see her on the front end in here, top of the lane. The race has already come back live, actually. The 4th place finisher, Tupi, just went and won the grade 3 Los Cienegos over at Santa Anita over the weekend. But it'll all come down to stretching out. Does she want to get the additional distance? This is 6 furlongs. Now she'll have to deal with the mile on Friday.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of questions about her. One of them is obviously the distance. Can she be at her best going the mile? As we were getting at earlier, you could argue her worst race ever was going this distance in just her second start, where she had things her own way on the front end and still came back to the field at the very end at 3 to 5 odds at Keeneland, where Chad Brown is supposed to get the job done with horses like that. The other question about risk threshold is how good is she really? Because
Yeah.
I know she's got a couple of these 90 buyers. When you take them apart, though, she got some pretty favorable pace setups in those 2 stakes attempts the last couple times. Just got to control things on the front end and still came back to the field in the stretch. And you go back to her maiden victory 3 back. That was a time on the turf course at Aqueduct where inside speed was absolutely deadly. And I think that 90 buyer is a little bit enhanced by the way the track was playing. So when you start to factor all of those things in, I've got some real questions about whether we're going to see that kind of effort in this spot.
Yeah, we have some concerns. And again, if you have you have a horse that's going to be a short price, maybe you look for some value elsewhere. Life, Love, and Laughter comes in off of setting the pace last time out and fading. That was going a mile and a 16th on the turf, finished 5th in that race, was actually behind one of today's rivals, Glorious Princess, who finished 3rd in there. What do you think about Life, Love, and Laughter? I'll get it right one of these times, David, I think, in here. Or we could probably just say the number 5. It's easier and safer for me.
Yeah, the Maryland-bred 5-year-old bear. She's run pretty well against some decent competition over the past year. I will say a race like this seems like it's a little bit of a stretch for her just based on some of her results against similar competition. But I mean, you go back through her form and she's run some buyers in the low 80s that would put her in the mix here. And her most recent start, she got away on the front end, but she set a legitimate pace. And yeah, she came back to the field at the end, but I think that was a pretty strong affair, that December 20th allowance race at Gulfstream at the same level. So I won't be surprised when she is forward once again, getting a good stalking trip and is around in the stretch. I just view her as a little bit more of an underneath use.
I think you set the scene very well when you said 2 of the real variables in this race are with risk threshold and seeing if this horse wants to get the distance, and then with Life's Inaudible, is this the same Life's Inaudible? Was this a horse maybe that was pretty precocious early on and just hasn't continued to progress as she's gotten older? She's now a 4-year-old filly, and David, in her last start, she just did not fire at all. Now, we can maybe make an excuse and say the top 3 finishers in that race were basically 2-1-3, like all the way around. It was pretty much a merry-go-round. There just was not much passing, horses coming from behind the field. But you would like to see a little bit more from her, even if she's not going to win that race. It just was not much at all in her first start from March to December.
Yeah, there are some real red flags with this filly because you never like to see a horse kind of reach their top form and then disappear the way that she did following the Here Comes the Bride, where I mean she was competitive with a really nice horse in Pounce and Ozara, who looked to be in great form at the time too, running the kind of buyers that would have made her competitive in some of the grade one races in this division later in the
Yeah.
season and missed all of that. When she returned to the Tropical Park Oaks, the fact that Irad got off her and they put Joe Bravo on, I think, was a little bit of a sign that they weren't expecting the very best from her that day. She didn't take a whole lot of money, and as
No.
you said, just didn't do much running at all. And now they're making this drop in class, not trying one of the stakes races. You know, Mike Rapoli loves to be involved in stakes races on big days like Pegasus World Cup. So I'm just wondering if we're ever going to see this filly get back to that effort we saw from her last winter.
The number 7, Nugenia, is a really honest horse. David, you've seen this one quite a bit over on the New York circuit. 6-year-old mare. She's been in the money in 11 of 14 on the turf. And the 3 times she wasn't were starts right before and after a 13-month layoff and the start right after a 7-month layoff. Like everything in her form makes a lot of sense. She's just an honest horse. She got back into the winner's circle in her second start off the long layoff last time out. And yeah, she's going to need to improve off of this effort, but we know she can take a step forward back up to where she was. Does she still have some of those like middle to 80, close to the 90 buyer speed figures she was running last year? I think she's just one of the more seasoned horses in this field. And I like her third start back off the bench. Thought this was a pretty good effort.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see her get back to some of that form that we had seen from her during her 4-year-old season, where she just kind of came to hand out of nowhere. I mean, she had been a pretty good New York bred allowance horse, but you certainly weren't expected to see the kind of performance that she put forth in the Yado back in 2023 at Saratoga, where she just looped that field in the far turn and ran away from some decent horse in the stretch to earn a 90 buyer, which I think at the time was a 10-point improvement over anything she had done before. And as you said, I mean, she's run a couple nice races since then with that big layoff in between. The replay we looked at, she got a great trip from Joe Bravo, who, you know, we talked about the Red Seas party with another horse earlier. I mean,
Yep.
there was that big gap that he couldn't avoid going for at the top of the stretch. I do kind of realize that Joe Bravo is the kind of jockey that doesn't often look for holes inside and is more willing to go around a field. So breaking from post 7 here, I wonder if she's going to make that 4 wide blitz on the far turn once again, which could be tough to do at Gulfstream Park. But look, if she can build on her form from last time, now third off the layoff, she is a major player in here.
Lost to a horse named Moonage Daydream last 2 starts back, who's won 4 of 5 and 3 straight New York bred stakes races. We round out the field with Glorious Princess. She was making her first start in 9 months on December 20th, David. It was in a non-winners of 2, optional 62, and she just got shuffled pretty badly down on the inside. Doesn't mean she was gonna win that race or anything, but it was a sort of different tactics for her because most of her races she'd been pretty much right on the front end. So she did show she can pass horses a little bit. She got back into the race. She kind of loomed up, but she flattened out. Maybe because she lost a little bit early on the race, and maybe because she was a little bit tired making her first start in 9 months. What do you think about Glorious Princess in here, drawn to the outside?
Yeah, I think you sum up her last race really well. I mean, she was farther back than she really wanted to be, but I thought she advanced into the race pretty
Yeah.
nicely around the far turn and got a good rail trip from about the halfway point to the finish line, tipped out at the top of the stretch. And you could just see the effects of the layoff showing in the final eighth of a mile because she didn't really finish off that race. She's now had a couple of long layoffs during her career. And I mean, you look back, I think just 6 starts in her past performances to when she earned that 87 buyer, winning off by open lengths at Churchill Downs back in May of 2023. That kind of performance pointed her out as a potential graded stakes horse down the line. It hasn't worked out that way, but maybe now, second off the layoff for Brendan Walsh, she's ready to start getting back to those kinds of efforts. I looked up some stats for Brendan Walsh. Second off a 6-month, 12-month layoff on the turf. He's 11 for 55, a 20% win rate, a $2.68 ROI. So he does pretty well with this move, and we'll see what kind of trip she can work out from the outside post.
As we move to take a look at selections, got to give a shout out to producers Lucia and Bobby. It's a busy week. We're going to be recording tons of previews ahead. Thanks for all the hard work you guys do. Looking forward to hanging out with Lucia at Gulfstream this weekend. David, where are you going to go with top selections in this one?
Yeah, I was kind of on the fence between the number 2, Uphill Dance, and the number 8, Glorious Princess. I think the one that I put on top, Glorious Princess, is just a little more trustworthy, having that positive race under her belt last time and the good efforts to get back to second off the layup. Maybe she'll take that step forward. But I will monitor the price of Uphill Dance because I do think there's enough pace for her to potentially get involved late.
Put the two horses that I like the most on top with the 7, Nugenia, with the 8, Glorious Princess to the outside. And then I put the 2 wild cards behind them with Risk Threshold, who we're just not sure how far this one wants to go. And then the other wild card of Life's Inaudible. Does this horse have any of that kind of class and precocity still left in there? We'll find out on Friday with the DRF race of the day. Remember, you can get free past performances at drf.com.